Good evening, my friends. I have had this video in my mind for a very long time, and it's really simple about what are some different signs of progress that are not its and pops going away, symptoms going away or a negative chatter disappearing, which are important parts of recovery. However, there are many, many, many other signs of progress that are easier to keep track of, because in this video is for people who are in recovery, more so because my experience is with recovery from chronic illness, more that boat, using neuroplasticity, brain rewiring, but probably people in other types of recovery could find some value in this. I know a lot of things cross over. But yeah, it's so tempting and easy. A lot of times I have this when I talk to clients, and when I say, like, what's going well, oftentimes people ask, or people say, they talk about, like, what physical, like, how they're feeling. Like, I felt good, I had a calm day, I slept well, I did this thing. And those are all good things, but we want to make sure that we are not overly focused on what the limbic system is doing, because part of the point of rewiring the limbic system is so that it obeys us and we're not looking at it anymore. We don't have to look at it and keep track of what it's doing. When we're recovered, we're free. We don't have to think about what our limbic system's going to do, or it's not part of the picture anymore. And that looking to the limbic system to check on its behavior and see what it's doing is part of the loop. Limbic system impairment is, the limbic system creating a problem and then having you focus on the problem it created. Like a puppy chasing its tail. It's a self-perpetuating thing. So focusing on how we're feeling or what's going the way we want it to go, it's not a bad thing, but there are many other signs that you're making progress and that can really boost your confidence in what you're doing and make you feel encouraged and boost that confidence and feel like, what I'm doing is working, and I notice all these differences and patterns. Because in recovery, we're changing the brain, and your brain is how you perceive everything, the world around you and yourself. There's a lot of little things that can give you a clue in that your brain is changing, and these are the things that I've relied on most of my recovery. And people ask me, when did your nets disappear? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know, I don't remember, because I focused on these things instead. So I'm going to just talk through the list, and I might put it in the description box as well. Okay, so the first thing, I've got like 25 things on this list. Greater ease in elevating your mood. So as you move away from negative or addictive patterns, whether it's a neurochemical addiction or behavioral or whatever, as you move away from that and you start to move towards normal brain function, focusing on constructive things all day, every day, and especially with brain retraining, elevating your mood. With that, the more you use those new wires, the easier it's going to be to use them. So if you've been using them a lot, and a lot of times, again, when we start this process, and at different points in the process when our brain is more neuroplastic, it can be so hard to focus on something positive. Your brain wants to go in every direction except positive. Literally every direction except positive. So if it's easier to get yourself into a good mood and just get lost in an activity or something like that, and it doesn't take as much effort and you're more deeply into it, that can be a really great sign of progress, because that's your quality of life right there, is how deeply you can engage with something that feels good to you. So that's huge. Closely related to that is it's easier to utilize your tools. So for those in brain retraining, that would include things like visualization or any other tool or pattern, anything you use to interrupt a pattern, anything at all, any distraction, any brain games, or connecting with people, social, like anything you're doing to interrupt a pattern at all. Doing math in your head, counting colors, whatever you're doing to redirect your focus. When it's easier to do that, that's a sign that your brain is retraining. Because again, if it's that also implies, like a puppy, that you're training this young thing, and the more well trained it becomes, the easier and quicker it responds to your cues. Along with this would be, it's easier to get into rounds. If you're doing a program where you're doing visualization, your visualization is going to become richer and deeper and easier, and kind of related to that as well, your ability to recall memories will come back slowly over time too. That can be a thing that happens sometimes where people have a flood of memories come back, where all of a sudden, like, these parts of your life you just forgotten existed, all of a sudden you have vivid memories come back. And even now, just in my own life recovered, it's like relevant memories come back to me, and very vividly. Like tonight I was playing hearts with some friends, and I played a lot of hearts on a computer when I was like 7. And all these very vivid images of the computer screen and of playing hearts on this computer. It was just like, wow, that's like right there. I thought about riding a motorcycle, and it was like I could taste the motorcycle helmet, even though it had been 25 years since I rode a motorcycle. So I'd ridden on one. So those kinds of things are a great sign that that retrieval of memories is easier. Greater awareness of pops is actually a great sign. Sometimes people will start out and think, oh, I don't have pops. And I'm always like, well, just give it some time. The more you elevate your mood, the greater contrast will show the darker things. So greater awareness of your pops is actually a huge sign of progress. And that's part of why I wanted to make this, because sometimes the signs of progress can feel unpleasant in the moment. So knowing that it's a sign of progress it can help you to feel confident in what you're doing and be like, okay, I can frame this greater awareness of how many negative thought patterns I actually do have and how many things are coming up in my day, and realize that this awareness is actually a sign of progress, clarity. It's clarity is what it is. And if you cannot change a pattern you're not aware of, so having an awareness of a pattern is actually really a good thing. And again, and related to that, greater clarity in all patterns. So noticing behavioral patterns, thought patterns, just noticing when they show up in the day, what tends to trigger them. Just noticing that they're happening, noticing that you're using more negative language than you really want to be, and be able to, even if you don't catch yourself at first, noticing behavioral pops where it's like you procrastinate a lot, and especially procrastinate on utilizing your tools, or procrastinate on other self-care or basic everyday life things, anything like that. Noticing those patterns, if you haven't previously noticed them, is a positive shift. That means that you are getting clarity. You're separating somewhat from your automatic patterns enough to recognize them. When you are inside of the automatic pattern, you can't see it. You are one with that pattern. When you are utilizing your tools and changing your brain enough, you realize, oh, I'm not my patterns. And there's this, but when how that presents is, oh, wow, look at all these patterns I'm having. So again, that can be a really helpful reframe. And what that does as well is it gives you the ability to interrupt those patterns. Because if you're not aware of them, then you can't interrupt them. So now you have that awareness of, and sometimes too, greater clarity on why you're having these pops, maybe these underlying beliefs that are creating these patterns or ways of being. Sometimes it'll trigger a memory of an event that happened where you got a pattern, you got a habit from some sort of event that had a very heavy emotional charge to it, and you're like, oh, this is why I've had this pattern my whole life, because of this semi-traumatic event that happened in the midst of a lot of other stress. So those things can be very enlightening, because it's a lot easier to let go of things when we realize that they aren't you. It's not you. It's a pattern that your brain picked up to protect itself in some scenario, probably when you were a child, or some point in your life, any point in your life, but a lot of them from when we're children, especially the most deeply layered ones from when we're kids, because we've had them for most of our lives. But those awareness of those patterns, realizing, oh, this is why, or I have this belief about myself or my life or other people or my life situation, and having that awareness of, oh, this is why I'm feeling this way. This is why I feel triggered by this. Those can be really helpful, because then you can address the root. You can give yourself that truth medicine, I like to say, like opposites or affirmations of what's the truth I need, and then you can move forward. So those are huge signs of progress, just being able to notice those things. Being more decisive, being able to make decisions more easily, even about the tiniest things, like what to eat. Like, that's one thing I used to be so indecisive about what to eat my whole life, and it's like, it's just across the board in the tiniest things. What to wear, what to eat, what movie to watch, what music you want to listen to, which mood elevator you want to do, what you want to, if you're doing visualization, what you want to do for your visualization. Just any little decisions through day-to-day life become, having any greater degree of ease in making decisions is a huge sign of progress. And as I've mentioned a few times, but that ability to stand apart from your brain, if you're having a moment where you're either triggered or you're getting pulled back to some old pattern, and in the middle of it, again, even if you don't successfully redirect it, if you can feel that you are not it, and there is a sense of self apart from it, if you're able to move in the direction that you want to move, even with the reaction happening, that's the biggest win. But even just having the awareness of the fact that whatever's happening is happening and you're separate from it and you're observing it from the outside, that's a distinct positive shift. Noticing more detail in your environment, as when the brain is in a stress response, and when we've had a limbic injury, and any time when the brain is caught in a lot of looping patterns, it's entirely focused on one thing, because that survival instinct gets honed in, and your brain's going to filter for only what it thinks is relevant information in your environment. And as the brain calms and comes into relaxation chemistry, you begin to have a healthier, more curious, almost childlike perspective of your environment, and you start to notice details. All kinds of details. I remember noticing things about my freezer when I was like 4 months into recovery that I was like, I've opened this freezer every day for the last several years. I never noticed this feature on it, and it was like, whoa, okay. So just things like that, I've always, taken heart knowing, okay, if I'm, especially when I've been really neuroplastic and feel like I'm plateauing, but I feel like I also shouldn't be plateauing for how much work I'm putting in. Noticing that I'm noticing things has always been like, okay, good, like something's happening, my vision's clearing, my ability to actually receive the world as it is instead of through this fear filter is increasing. And a similar note, the world looking cleaner, sharper, clearer, brighter, like an HD version of the world, any of those things, as well as the world holding still when you look at it, are all really great signs of your brain. Once again, basically your senses working accurately because there's no more fear filter. And this is something I've talked about with clients that I find hilarious, because I didn't realize that other people had this experience. It was like, when my brain calms down, the world holds still. And it's hilarious. So that's a big one. Similarly, a sense of stability and ease while walking or standing is a great sign of progress. I remember this happened, I think April of like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. Probably it's coming up on 2 years now. I remember walking out of my bedroom one morning, and the world was holding, like the ground under my feet felt like it was holding still for the first time in my life. I remember just standing in the hallway and being like, the floor isn't going anywhere. And I hadn't even been aware that that was happening because it had been there for so long that I didn't realize it. So it was just really funny. It was a funny moment, but an amazing moment. And it's been something I treasure now, is like when everything holds still, it's like, oh, everything's holding still by itself. It's so amazing. So another sign of progress. A shorter time redirecting after triggering events, taking less time to calm yourself down is great. Being less irritable overall, less bothered by little things. It's easier to be kind, easier to be patient, easier to be loving. One of my favorite positive shifts is that just increased kind of resilience to the everyday, life being what it is, not in our control. Huge. Easier to get lost in activity, as I mentioned that earlier. For me, it was an incredible feeling the first time I watched a movie, and I forgot about everything but the movie. And I worked for years to get to that point, and it was a huge accomplishment for me. But at any point in your day, getting lost in your work, getting lost in whatever you're doing, great sign that your brain is able to. It's not caught in those loops. If it's not caught in those loops, it's free to actually fully engage in what you're doing, and you get lost and forget everything. And that's the point. You want to be one person again. A lot of times there's this sense that there's the limbic system, and then there's you, and there's like two people, and it feels kind of, when you're retraining, and it's a necessary part of the process, but when that disappears and it's just, you're just a normal person, you feel like a normal person for a little while, it's heaven. Increased productivity or creativity without effort. That's a big one, without effort. Because again, the brain not being caught in those looping patterns frees up, and not having that stress response, which sucks. It's like siphons away your energy from anything useful. So when that turns off, you get your energy back. Your brain can now come up with ideas and be productive, and it doesn't take effort, because that's your natural brain state, is to be able to do those things without it taking effort. Or at least a lot of it. Yeah, the overall sense that your limbic system isn't you at all, that's a big one too. Just the sense that, oh, like all of this is happening over here and it's not me. Like all these things are happening and this has nothing to do with me or my life or anything. That's such a great feeling. That's a huge, huge step of progress. Again, it's like you kind of go from being your limbic system to having it as like a sidecar to then it being retrained where you don't see it anymore. But that in-between step is a great place to be. Places, foods, scents, people, etc. no longer being triggering. That's a huge sign of progress. A deeper sense of self-worth that makes life and social interaction easier. Another great sign of progress. Less tendencies to leave the present moment, because as we know, when our brains have been stuck in a repeating pattern, it likes to go back to the past and forward to the future a lot, to be, to have regret or to have fear or whatever, what have you. So being able to just stay in the present moment without pinning yourself to it is wonderful, wonderful sign of progress. And one of them truly is times where its or pops disappear. Which, because this is the stress response turning off, the more you elevate your mood, the stress response begins to flicker a little bit. So it's not like, for most people, it's, again, most people that I know, which everyone's so different with this, but most people, things will turn off for periods of time. It'll start with like an hour or a few minutes, and then it'll be hours or days where your mind is clear, there's no pops, your body feels fine, there's no symptoms, and then the limbic system will kick back in and like check in, and then it'll turn back off again. And that pattern, it's just that the times get longer and better, and the times where the stress switch is on get fewer and farther between. And this seems obvious to me, but I realize it may not be obvious to everyone. Just a greater sense of calm overall in your day, and easier or deeper sleep, which are connected very much. Not being afraid of your limbic system's reactions to things. That's huge. This is more specifically to people in brain retraining. If you know your limbic system has a pattern or a reaction, and you do the thing, and the fear is gone. Maybe the reaction still is there, but you're not afraid of it anymore. That's a huge sign of progress, because that's the first step. If you're not afraid of the reaction, the fear is what keeps the loop going, because then you're stuck looking at it, and that's what creates the symptoms to begin with, is the fear. So if the fear disappears, the symptoms or the reaction will eventually fade in time, but the not being afraid of it's the first step to freedom. And then overall, your ability to handle more stress without getting triggered as you used to. That's the last one. So just overall, being able to do more in your day, your days get fuller, you have stressful things that happen, and you have like a big enough level of dose chemistry and calm that it's like the water level rises and less things stick out the top, is kind of what it feels like to me. Events, activities, all of that. So that's my list of things, and I would love for people to add, things you've noticed. If there's anything I didn't include, write it in the comments so that people can come and feel encouraged and heartened that what they're doing is working and that their brain is changing, because it's so important that we have these signs to show us that, it's very motivating. It's so motivating. So be encouraged, be motivated, be inspired, and please share so that we can all experience that together. Much love to you, my friends. Happy holidays and all my love.